I started out life with very low self-esteem and stuff.
In the beginning, I had a pretty low impression of myself and other things. Have you ever pondered the mysteries that a well-known individual might choose to keep hidden behind closed doors? It was not enough for Richard Chamberlain to be a movie star. He was also the public face of Hollywood. Everyone mistook him for someone they knew. On the red carpet, he wore a smile, he played heroes on film, and he avoided getting into bad problems. However, when the FBI arrived at his mansion, they discovered that it was nothing like what they had seen in the movies. A truth that no one was prepared to face. Vaults, hidden data, and weird symbols were all present. You won't be able to believe this whatsoever. The idol that everyone was familiar with, it was a major event when the Federal Bureau of Investigation entered that house, but not before the house's vaults and secrets were discovered. In addition to being well known, she was also the public face of Hollywood during the 1960s. Because of the naturalness of his charisma, it did not require any effects or social media to be effective. His expression was as bright as a camera. The United States of America followed suit. In 1961, he was given a significant break by the television sitcom Dr. Kildare. But it wasn't merely a success, it caused a stir in the culture. During that particular instant, Chamberlain was not merely acting as if he were a physician. To me, he was the dream. Almost instantly, he became the object of desire for a whole generation because to the posters, fan letters, and shouting crowds that he received. Images of him were torn out of magazines by the young ladies. The young men yearned to be like him. These schools needed to have more of them. Nevertheless, Chamberlain did not merely remain on television, he continued for a while. Not only did his participation in Shogun and the Thornbirds garner a lot of attention, but they also became legendary. There were not a few of these pieces. They were difficult to understand, emotional, and dependent. It was not a problem for Chamberlain to deal with any of them. Beyond his beautiful looks, he was a man of substance. It was common knowledge that he possessed the ability to play with power, and he really did. It was Hollywood that provided him with a wide variety of assignments, ranging from romantic leads to historical epics and stories that were of a quality that earned him prizes. He was reliable and never lost his composure, and he was always calm. There was never any kind of problem or error that occurred. He performed his duties as a worker admirably. The man who was known across the business world to bring both talent and image to the table. Is that photo the one? It had a good effect. Every single interview was conducted in a predetermined manner, and every single public appearance was rehearsed. This was not a journey for Chamberlain. It wasn't really much that he divulged. It was almost as if he was always on stage or watching over something, because he did not change who he was even after the cameras stopped rolling. When it came to him, people were close, but not too near. Even while his followers adored him, they only saw what he intended for them to see. His allure had some smirks. It was easy to access on the inside, yet the exterior was smooth and easy to navigate. People started to wonder how someone who is so well known and who is constantly in the spotlight could be so private because of their status. In the news, there is not a single mess. I have no nightmares about the tabloids. At midnight, there will be no admissions. He did not exert any effort to achieve fame, rather it came to him. Nevertheless, it appeared as though he lived a little bit outside of it, very much like a ghost that is easy to spot. This level of control was not typical even in Hollywood, which is notorious for its dissemination of false information. A number of other stars buckled, cracked, and disintegrated. As a result of the pressure, the name is not Chamberlain. It was wonderful that he remained in the same location for a number of years. This is way too good. When someone has such a strong grasp over their public persona, others begin to question what they are concealing from the world. Could it be that Chamberlain was simply incredibly controlled, or did he have another side that no one saw before? More people talked about what might be going on behind closed doors, and the more people talked about it, the better he appeared to external observers. After that, the focus shifted to something else, a journey from the bustling city of Hollywood to his spacious home surrounded by tall walls. The residence was kept quiet, secured, and shut off from the rest of the world as a part of the secret that was being preserved. In the event that Richard Chamberlain did not have anything to conceal, then why did his entire existence appear to be designed to conceal everything? Because what followed was not a part, it was not a movie, and it was not anything that was made up. A raid was carried out. In addition, when the FBI eventually had the opportunity to break into his tightly secured home, they did not discover any movie photographs or notes from fans. It was something that they were really there for, something that they had buried, something that even the spies halted in their tracks when they discovered it. The location where Chamberlain resided was not only extraordinarily lavish, but it was also guarded like a top-secret government installation. How come? The reason behind this is that someone was concealing something that was too hazardous to leave unattended behind the gates. It's time to go inside. A stronghold, not a residence. There was no intention for Richard Chamberlain to receive praise for the palace that he constructed. It was intended to be forgotten after all. From the outside it did appear to be rather wonderful. Beautiful gardens are being climbed by ivy, which is crawling up the walls, and iron gates that are very tall. However, it did not allow you to enter. It cautioned you against going outside. The walls of the farm were sturdy and extended all the way around it, resembling arms that never let go of their grip. From every angle, security cameras could be seen observing everything. Of those, some were not covered, while others were. It was not an error to do it. To a certain extent, that was the message. Not by chance did you find yourself in this location. The front door did not have any flashy events, red carpets, or portraits of renowned persons waiting for guests to enter. It was Chamberlain who carried out a very subtle action. It is far too quiet. Due to the fact that it was surrounded by hills and dense trees, the mansion gave the impression that it did not belong to a Hollywood celebrity. From the outside it appeared to be more like a private bunker. Changes have been made to the house over the years, although not in the same way that other older residences have. It remained intact and did not become soiled throughout the course of time. The size increased. The gates were replaced with ones that were made of a more durable metal. On the interior of the ancient walls, new walls were constructed. Increase the number of cameras, make the windows more sturdy, and install glass that is not prone to breaking. It was all carried out in complete hush, not a single comment to the press. It was not possible to see any workers displaying their job. The house became more difficult to enter and comprehend with each new adjustment that was made. Neighborhood residents were able to see. Initially they claimed that it was only for commercial purposes. It was then that everything began to go wrong. It was an unusual occurrence when the lights came on. There was a shadow that flickered across the windows, but it appeared as though there was no one living there on a permanent basis. Several individuals drove into the driveway, remained there for a brief period of time, and then drove away. All of the windows in the vehicles were always covered, and they were never marked. The neighbors started talking to one another. The reports spread further and further despite the fact that they didn't say much. At night there were several individuals who reported hearing low humming sounds, which sounded like machinery that were concealed in the ground. Some individuals reported seeing somebody walking around behind the blinds. There was a parcel that was left at the gate by someone, and when they returned 10 minutes later, it was no longer there. It's not the box, a complete record of the delivery system. The individuals who used to clean houses did not make a lot of noise. Many of them refused to engage in conversation. There were a few of them who stated that they were not permitted to clean certain areas of the house. It was impossible to open the doors. There are no doorknobs in any of the rooms. One individual even claimed that there was a tunnel that vanished during the time that they were present. Soon after, she decided to resign. Few individuals remained in the area. No, not the employees, not the customers. Even members of your family have stopped coming to see you. The public's perception of Chamberlain subsided over time. As a child, he would always grin for the camera. The man turned into a narrative when he was at home. Things got much more dire when the house started to have a sense of life. There was an excessive lack of noise. This is way too good. It never seemed as though anything was wrong, but there was never a moment when things seemed right. Some individuals claimed that it was cursed. It was managed according to certain individuals. Over the course of time, the house was given a name that was never really spoken aloud. The room that is completely empty. Even though it was not empty, there was something about it that gave people the impression that it could consume them. This is the point at when the true narrative began. It was believed by some individuals that Chamberlain was concealing something from them, something that needed to be protected from harm. This was something that had no place in a home, or perhaps even in this earth. It was not at all appropriate. There were many who believed that it was a treasure that had been misplaced. It was said by some that it was evidence of a covert organization. Some individuals even expressed their belief that the home was constructed on top of an old basis that had been neglected. One element, however, was consistent throughout all of them. Chamberlain was providing a secure location for something that was never intended to be discovered. It was impossible for these individuals to just avoid the residence. In addition, there was something else stored inside. By the time the FBI ultimately made their way through those gates, the story was no longer a story. So when the agents stepped inside, they didn't get the impression that it was the residence of a famous person. There was a sense that it was the beginning of something far larger, more than merely concrete. The walls had a variety of elements. Over the course of several decades, they concealed a great deal of information. Also, which of those things is it? The fact that it was concealed at such a great depth required teams of specialists and steel cutters to locate it. It began just before dawn, when the sky was still dark and the air seemed to be holding its breath. This was the moment when the silence broke. The only sound that could be heard was the quiet rumble of black SUVs as they drove down the empty road in the direction of Richard Chamberlain's estate. Neither leaks nor warnings were discovered. Even though they did not have any lights or sirens, they moved with the precision that is only seen when something significant is going to take place. Within a short period of time, the border was totally sealed off. Roads are obstructed here. There is no one inside or outside the building. The residents of the area were still sleepy and had no idea what was going on in their own gardens where they were sleeping. FBI officers were silent, well prepared and attentive as they went out of the building before them. This was not merely a hunt for something. This was a directive. They passed through the front gate of the estate as if they were shadows, and they encountered no resistance along their journey. There was no activation of the property's own security systems. All of the cameras had already been taken over. It was far too simple. It is far too quiet. As soon as they entered the house, they had the impression that something was off. The home of a renowned person was not the typical chaos or confusion that one would find at a home of that person. As a result of everything being in its original state and meticulously arranged, the inside appeared to be a museum. On the other hand, not in a welcoming or warm manner, the event appeared to have been staged, as if it had been planned, and Chamberlain was aware that this day would come. That's when things started to become unclear. The floor plans did not really correspond to what they witnessed. There were some rooms that were not supposed to be there. The hallways were significantly longer than what was depicted on the blueprints. In spite of the fact that there should have been only 4 corridors, there was an additional one. Doors led to walls that were devoid of any objects. When one of the agents leaned against a bookcase, the bookcase slid slightly enough to demonstrate that there was plenty of room behind it. Not by chance, but a well-known secret, designed with a specific goal in mind. However, the more they dug, the more peculiar it became. By applying the appropriate amount of effort, a wooden wall was able to slide aside, revealing a stairway that had never been documented before. It dropped to the ground and was engulfed by the darkness. While they were at the foot of those steps, hidden beneath layers of gravel, they discovered something that was not appropriate for a private residence. It is a vault. The size is enormous. Steel is used. It is chilly. There were biometric readers that appeared to have been taken directly from a military installation and were secured behind them. It was not merely risk-free. When it came to sealing it, the majority of the agents that worked on it had never seen the technology that was employed before. Investigate the retina. Using one's voice, heat-mapped keypads are available for use. There was a rationale to the fact that whatever was concealed behind that door had been protected. All of the individuals present in the room were terrified as a result of that. Nobody was aware of what they were witnesses to at that moment. Despite this, It was abundantly evident that this was not only a collection of private writings belonging to an actor, something that is fresh, something else added. It has been requested that someone who is capable of breaking into high-security stores be brought in. It took a number of hours. There was a decrease in temperature. The level of silence continued to decrease. At long last the vault was opened. A squeak could be heard as the door opened. No signs of disorder or disarray were observed by the agents inside. Structure was the issue. Keep it in order. Each and every thing, file and piece, has its own designated location. Building up. Annotated. Constructed in such a way that a file appeared to have been buried rather than lost. Furthermore, there was an additional locker located in the middle of everything. Not as large, the better. In addition, this one was not restricted by technological means. It was dotted with signs, indications that no one could possibly comprehend. Weird symbols that did not resemble anything that had been used throughout this time period. Are you talking about that second vault? As a result, everything would be set back. Due to the fact that the moment that antique vault was unlocked, they did not simply discover more mysteries. The reality that they discovered was so well concealed that it had the potential to shatter the basis of everything that we believed we understood. Shadows stored in a vault. The door to the vault opened as if it had been waiting for quite some time. On the interior it was dry and thick, and there were no indications that time had gone. In addition, the spies did not just enter a room by walking in. Due to the fact that it was concealed, the collection was never supposed to be seen by anyone who was not a resident of this residence. The walls were lined with shelves that were stacked with things that did not appear to have come from the outside. These shelves contained documents, maps, boxes, and stacks of other items. There was no dust present, no deterioration. Things appeared to be in good condition, almost as if someone had been preparing for a considerable amount of time to ensure the security of these things. On several of the papers, it was written that they were classified. These are the genuine ones, which were manufactured by the government, sealed in plastic, and tagged with stamps from agencies that some agents were not even aware of. Over and over again, there were pages upon pages of encrypted letters written in languages and symbols that did not correspond to anything that was found in regular intelligence reports. When the sheets were exposed to infrared light, the ciphers that were written on them revealed a different pattern. Except for one name that kept popping up, some were completely cut out of the conversation. It is the circle of preservation. Within one of the corners of the basement, there was a black box that was locked, something that is neither metal nor wood, but on the midway ground. With curves that appeared to have been burnt in rather than cut, it was carved all over with curves. At the top of the lid, there were symbols that looped in a manner that was impossible for anyone to interpret. Despite the fact that there was no lock visible, no one had the courage to open it without first carrying out a thorough inspection. It didn't matter what was inside. Chamberlain made sure that nobody saw it. There was a leather folder right next to the box, and inside of it was a stack of photographs that had been meticulously arranged. There is no denying that a few of the photographs of individuals were taken several decades ago. There are some that are in color, while others are in black and white. There was no indication of any kind on them. There was no name given to them. All of them, however, shared a single characteristic. Richard Chamberlain has never been mentioned in public by any of them at any point in time. A few of them were not even present in any digital record available. Under the photographs, it was possible to view the identifications. Over 20 of them in total. Different locations represent a variety of meanings. Each one, however, had from the beginning, I had a pretty low opinion of myself. It was silent, not able to be traced, and it moved through both space and time. There was a worn-out leather packet that contained the most peculiar document of all, which was concealed near the back of the vault. It was a letter that had been written by hand, and throughout its entirety, a golden mark had been melted into the page in some spots. Although the identity of the sender was not entirely obvious, it was delivered to a person who was referred to as the keeper. It was mentioned that there was a project that was associated with something that was known as PMP. The article discussed a network that has been in existence for a considerable amount of time,
and is accountable for the preservation of information, the collection of truth, and the protection of things that cannot be explained. In spite of the fact that it listed places, dates and even persons, a significant number of the names were absent, as if they had been removed intentional. In the final line of the final paragraph, it was said that in the event that discovery ever occurs, the circle must break apart, and the vessel must maintain its silence. When they heard this line, all of the agents came to a complete halt. What was the significance of it? What actions did the goalie take? And what was the reason that a Hollywood celebrity from the Golden Age had papers that connected him to a covert network that was involved in the workings of history behind the scenes? By this point it was no longer merely a hidden compartment within the vault. It demonstrated that there was something more significant taking place, something that was taking place on a worldwide scale, and something that extended beyond the realm of Hollywood. It was not merely a matter of Chamberlain collecting objects. It was a secret that he had been keeping knowledge and tricks. There is evidence that indicates the existence of a parallel universe that is concealed by movies and celebrity. As time went on, the information that they discovered made the truth appear to be more perilous, mainly due to the fact that the question became more prominent with each untraceable passport, each coded letter, and each encrypted file. Would it have been the case that Chamberlain had been acting all along, or was his celebrity only the ideal cover for something that the world was never supposed to learn? When the spies looked deeper into Chamberlain's files, more and more things started making sense. The star with a secret mission was the one who was responsible for this. It seemed as though his life away from the camera took him to areas that cameras never saw, which was surprising for someone whose job it was to be in front of the camera. Stamps from countries that might have been cause for concern were found on the secret passports. Not only was he going on vacation, but he was also going to catch a movie premiere. It was against the regulations for a Hollywood actor. He had traveled to locations where there was conflict, which was against the guidelines. At a time when the Cold War was at its worst, Berlin was the location, right before the United States troops left Saigon. Cairo, approximately a few weeks prior to a significant diplomatic failure. And those travels were never mentioned in any interviews or articles that were published in the media. He appeared at the hottest parts of history like a ghost, always appearing before or after a significant event. He went through the history like a ghost. The photographs of him were not visible to anyone. Not only were there no security guards, but there were also no records of who accompanied him. On the other hand, his official biography did not mention these journeys at all. According to his papers, on the other hand, a different statement was made. When agents compared the dates of those trips to older intelligence files, they discovered some peculiar connections between the two. A number of outdated and deteriorating government cables that have been made available to the public discuss the use of public individuals as covert couriers. There are well-known painters, writers and poets, people who were able to go anywhere they pleased without fear of being discovered. These report pages contained a number of concealed references, including those to codenames, travel routes and managers. One of the files contained information about a well-known actor who had the ability to enter European offices while maintaining diplomatic cover. Despite the fact that there were no definite names, the dates were extremely near to Chamberlain's transfers. When that was over, the letters arrived. Mail that had been sent to addresses that were associated with recognized intelligence sites was discovered in one of the folders of the vault. The style of writing was lucid and precise. Some of them were delivered to phony companies. Moreover, some were delivered to individuals who had direct connections to intelligence organizations in both Europe and South America. There were a few of them that had stamps printed on them that contained espionage emblems from the Cold War. These symbols had not been seen in public for more than 30 years. Those letters did not have a pleasant tone to them. It appeared to be a commercial enterprise. It is keyed. It is chilly. It was in the bank records that the rest of the narrative was found. There was a connection between Chamberlain's name and a collection of offshore accounts that were first established under a variety of identities. These were not accounts of a minor kind. The large transactions in which clean money was brought in and quiet money was taken out were handled by them. The funds appeared to be utilized for funding operations that were not known, and they were concealed beneath multiple layers of corporations. A few of them lead back to locations that are under the watchful eye of the entire planet. It was impossible to locate any others at all. However, the patterns appeared to be similar to the way that covert intelligence agencies used to pay for missions without being discovered. Neither taxes nor privacy were at issue here. The assembly and engineering of this was done. There appeared to be a larger plan behind each and every business move that was made. Fans believed that Chamberlain moved away from the media in order to lead a more private life for a number of years. However, it is possible that the quiet exit was not indeed retirement. It might have been a moving instance, becoming a private asset after having previously been a public figure, the kind of asset that could move freely from one nation to another without being subject to any restrictions. Someone with the ability to sneak into private areas, pass over a sealed envelope, and then vanish without leaving any indication that they were there. The entirety of his professional life underwent a rapid transformation. There is a possibility that he was not acting on screen. There is a possibility that the role that he played that no one noticed was the most significant one he ever played. What Chamberlain was and for whom he worked were also questions that were posed, in addition to the question of who Chamberlain was. What was never intended to be observed by anyone. At the very end of the vault, there was a stack of old metal cardboard boxes. There is no dust. Is numbered, very well separated from one another. It felt as if someone was watching them from a distance. These were not only peculiar items to keep in storage, these were reels from a film. It was a dozen of them. Each one had a peculiar title that was written by hand in ink that was ancient and weathered. A few of them were referred to as the Circle April 1963. Others just provided partial dates or addresses of locations. There is no evidence of camera shots, no logos at all. All that could be heard around them was a spooky silence. The agents did not immediately come into contact with them. They were required to wait for authorized personnel to examine the footage and perform a scan on it. The program that was played back was not a motion picture. The movie was not a documentary in any way. It was harsh, held in one's palm, and terrifying. It appeared as though the camera was not moving at all. It was as if it were a part of a show. It appeared as though it was observing its movement. Within the first reel, there was a group of men dressed in tuxedos and women dressed in gowns, seated around a circular table in a room that was devoid of windows and had candles. This appeared to be a covert occurrence. There was no one who could be heard out. It was possible to hear a singing that was low, rhythmic and peculiar. A man appeared to be reading from a book that was difficult to see the pages of. In the background he noticed a sign that was flickering on the wall. Indeed, it was something that he had witnessed at Chamberlain's vault in the past. The same shape, which is circular. This is the same language. Another video contained a
conversation that took place in a private dining area. Either a fracture in the wall or a screen obscured the view of the camera, making it impossible to see it. The men's expressions were unmistakable as they conversed. They included a well-known figure in the film industry as one of them. Moreover, his name is still honored in modern times. So which one is it? It is unknown. In no documented history of the company can you find this information. They spoke in hushed tones the most of the time and discussed topics such as control, public belief, and the management of stories before they spread. According to what they discussed, it was not about making movies. Making up stories based on actual events was the focus of this activity. As the spies studied the film more, it began to take on an odd appearance. A party that appeared to be taking place in a Hollywood home was captured on one film. But not the kind that you would anticipate. It was possible to see signs on the ground. Individuals who wear masks takes a slow step, nearly resembling machines. The only individual who stood out from the others was the one who looked directly into the camera, not even a glare. There were no words exchanged, simply being conscious of something. He seemed to be aware that someone was taping, just like he would want it to be. There are several videos that Chamberlain did not even film himself. They were captured by several cameras at various periods, as evidenced by the timestamps and ages that are included in the images. On the other hand, he came out on top in the end. The clips featured individuals who had been absent from the public spotlight for a considerable amount of time. There were some that were of individuals whose names had been removed from the credits of movies, interviews, and contracts with companies. It was like witnessing a Hollywood that had never been known to the public before, or was ever intended to do so. Nevertheless, Chamberlain possessed one and all, averted, stored away, not even touched. Simply asking him why he had them was not sufficient. This was likewise the case. Can you tell me what he did to gain access to these exclusive gatherings, rituals, and conversations that were not recorded? Is there a reason he protected them? How did he intend for them to behave? In what ways was it even more significant? From that point on, the FBI started to wonder if these movies were more than just memories. Perhaps they were for the purpose of safety. It's possible that they were really powerful. Something to decrease the amount of powerful people who speak up. That is, something that would frighten others away if they were to get too close. Chamberlain appeared to be in possession of the raw footage that no one wanted to find out about in a world that was full of lies. With each reel that they saw, the spies discovered that the truth was more sinister than they had previously believed. On these cassettes, there were more than just lies to be considered. These individuals were compiling a list of power, handle, and a scheme that had the potential to extend beyond the realm of Hollywood. What exactly did Chamberlain manage to acquire? Aside from that, what was it that he knew that did not anyone else know? The collection that isn't allowed. Agents discovered what could have been the most unsettling aspect of Chamberlain's hidden world concealed beyond the vault, which was concealed within a different room that was concealed behind another false wall. This time it was not a collection of film reels or documents. Things were involved. Objects that have been pulled from time itself, reels of them. In addition to being out of place and out of reach, each one was in his possession in some way. As the pieces were arranged on stone pedestals, encased in glass, or placed in crates without any labels, it was as if they were in a museum that had been forgotten. Now, however, this was not a museum. It was a strong warning. It was determined that the description of a Mesopotamian relic that had been stolen from a museum in Baghdad during the Gulf War was matched by an engraved tablet that had a crack down the middle. It was determined that a corroded ceremonial blade was connected to a missing case in northern Italy that had been outstanding since 1981. During a fire that occurred 20 years ago, clay figures that were described by archaeologists as belonging to a private Asian collection were destroyed. On the other hand, here they were, perfectly preserved and meticulously arranged. Each object was tagged with a number, giving the impression that it had been classified by someone who was aware of its significance. All of them were not contemporary. Each one was long gone, absent, and misplaced. On the other hand, they had found themselves buried beneath the residence of a Hollywood actor, but that wasn't the end of it. Canvases, dozens of paintings, and a wall were stacked against one another, yet none of the paintings were in styles that anyone could recognize. Twisted, harsh, and almost violent brushstrokes were used in the painting. The hues were icy, fading, and creepy altogether. Not many of them had autographs. Some didn't appear to be finished. Some were overly detailed, giving the impression that they were communicating things that people were never supposed to witness. One of them depicted a group of people wearing masks standing in a circle around a monolith that was black in color. Another depicted a figure that appeared to be Chamberlain himself, encircled by markings that were burned into the air surrounding him. No titles were given to any of the paintings. However, art analysts who were brought in by the FBI murmured that the motifs fit recognized patterns from subterranean groups, which are societies that are thought to exist in the shadows of history. One cabinet that was completely sealed stood out in the far corner of the room. Even though the wood had been slightly bent with age, the locks were brand new. After being pushed open, agents discovered leather-bound journals that had been stored in sleeves that had been vacuum-packed. There were dozens of them. And even more astonishingly, Chamberlain's handwriting was used for each and every one of them. It had been about a century since he was born, and the dates stretched back far further than that. There were some pages that were filled with schematics, random coordinates, timelines, and sentences that were repeated in multiple languages. Some were intimate reflections, while others were mysterious, emotive, and held a great deal of privacy. On the other hand, the penmanship was irrefutable. Through the years, not altered in any way. As soon as that happened, the narrative shifted away from focusing on what Chamberlain was concealing and instead became about something else. He was not merely amassing property. He exercised preservation. Being documented. They are clinging to fragments of history that the world either has forgotten or was never supposed to know in the first place. As soon as the news of the discovery became public, the media went into unprecedented mode. There was a surge in headlines. It was unclear to the news anchors whether this was a breakthrough or a breakdown, so they conversed in repetition. A few people yelled cover-up. According to some, it was a campaign of slander. Fans of Chamberlain were divided, with some being outraged and others being shocked. A plethora of ideas, conspiracies, denials, and in-depth analyses of each and every film that he had ever produced were posted on social media. And the government, for the most part, maintained its silence throughout it all. A statement issued by them officially stated that the documents were being evaluated. I have no confirmation. There is no denial. Only words that are frigid and ambiguous, with the intention of calming the storm without disclosing anything substantial. But there was no sign of people settling down. The reason for this is that it wasn't just a few items that were gone. Rewriting the true identity of Richard Chamberlain was the goal of this endeavor. And maybe the life that the world witnessed was nothing more than a mask that concealed a far more mature function. If you were taken aback by this, please remember to give it a like, help spread the word, and subscribe for more mind-blowing stories. Proceed to the next video that appears on your screen and click on it. After this, you won't believe what's about to happen. Maintain your sense of wonder.